You made your choice. Now the door is closed for you.
The steak was perfect. Medium rare, just like I'd ordered it 23 years ago on our first date at this same restaurant. The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched my wife Lena slice into hers with surgical precision, her manicured nails catching the candlelight. "You know what, David?" she said, not looking up from her plate. "I've been thinking." That's never good. In my experience as a construction foreman, when someone starts a conversation with, "I've been thinking," you're about to get screwed without the courtesy of a heads up. "About what, honey?" I asked, taking a sip of the overpriced wine she'd insisted on ordering. The private dining room at Romano's was costing me a week's wages, but hey, it was our 20th anniversary. Some things are worth celebrating. Or so I thought. Lena finally looked up, her green eyes cold as January in Buffalo. "I'm not your property, David. I'm a successful PR executive. I make my own decisions. And I've decided we're opening our marriage." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. What the heck does that mean? It means I'm tired of pretending to be the dutiful little wife. It means I deserve better than coming home to you watching ESPN in your work clothes. I set down my fork carefully. 20 years of marriage had taught me to recognize when Lena was building up to something nuclear. "Lena, what are you talking about?" She smiled then, the kind of smile that probably worked wonders in her boardroom but made my blood run cold. "It means I'm not asking for permission anymore." That's when Eddie walked in. Eddie Martinez, my best friend since high school, my best man, the guy who'd helped me build our deck last summer. He strutted into our private dining room like he owned the place, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. "Hey, Dave," he said with that cocky grin I'd once found charming. "Hope you don't mind me crashing the party." Lena stood up, smoothed her black dress, and walked over to Eddie. Right there, 3 feet from where I was sitting, she grabbed his face and kissed him like they were starring in some twisted romantic movie. When they finally came up for air, Eddie had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. Lena, on the other hand, looked triumphant. "David," she said, "meet my boyfriend." I sat there for a moment, processing. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too hot. The smell of garlic and wine that had seemed romantic 5 minutes ago now made me nauseous. "How long?" I asked quietly. "Does it matter?" Lena shrugged. "We're adults, David. We can handle this maturely." "How long?" Eddie cleared his throat. "Dave, man, it just happened. You know how these things go." "No, Eddie. I don't know how these things go. Why don't you explain it to me?" Lena grabbed her purse from the table. "We're leaving. The bill's on you, obviously. We'll talk about the details later." She kissed Eddie again, longer this time, making sure I got a good look. Then they walked out, leaving me alone with 2 barely touched steaks and a bottle of wine that suddenly tasted like vinegar. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, watching the candle burn down. The waiter kept peeking in, probably wondering if I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Finally, I stood up, threw 300s on the table, and walked out into the cold October night. My hands were shaking as I unlocked my truck. Not from the cold, from rage. The drive home took forever. Every red light gave me more time to think, to replay the scene, to imagine what I should have said or done. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd run through about 50 different scenarios, most of them involving my fist and Eddie's face. Our house looked exactly the same as when I'd left 2 hours ago. Same porch light, same welcome mat Lena had bought at Target, same flower boxes I'd built and painted last spring. But everything had changed. I walked through the front door and immediately went to the kitchen junk drawer, found what I was looking for, the spare key to Eddie's apartment. He'd given it to me last year when he went to Vegas, asked me to water his plants and pick up his mail. Then I went to my toolbox in the garage and grabbed my cordless drill. 20 minutes later, I'd changed every lock on the house. Front door, back door, garage, even the basement. Let her try to waltz back in here with her mature adult conversation. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my recliner. The house felt different now. Bigger, emptier, but also somehow cleaner, like I'd just taken out 20 years worth of garbage. My phone buzzed. Text from Lena. "We need to talk. Coming home in an hour." I typed back, "New locks, hotels down the street." The phone rang immediately. "David, don't be ridiculous. This is my house too." "Was," I said. Past tense. "You made your choice at dinner." "You can't lock me out of my own home." "Watch me." I hung up. The phone rang again and again. I turned it off and poured another bourbon. At least she'd left the steak. The pounding on my front door started at 11:30 that night. I ignored it. Let them wake the neighbors. Let the whole street see what kind of woman I'd been married to for 20 years. Dad, open up. That was Jessica, our 19-year-old daughter. I'd been wondering when she'd show up. I opened the door to find her standing there in her college sweatshirt, tears streaming down her face, with Lena right behind her looking like she wanted to homicide me. "What did you do to Mom?" Jessica demanded. "I changed the locks. Your mother decided she wanted to play house with Uncle Eddie, so I decided she could do it somewhere else." Lena pushed past Jessica. "David, we are going to discuss this like adults." "No, we're not. We're going to discuss this like what we are. A cheating wife and the husband she just humiliated in public. It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." I looked at Jessica, who was staring at both of us like we'd lost our minds. "Your mother announced at dinner tonight that she's been sleeping with Eddie. Then she kissed him in front of me and left me with the check." Jessica's face went white. "Mom, is that true?" Lena had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Jessie, sweetheart, sometimes adults need to make difficult decisions about their relationships." "That's not an answer." "Yes," I said. "It's true. Your mother's been having an affair with my best friend. And tonight, she decided to make it official." Jessica looked back and forth between us. "This is insane. You guys have been married forever. You can work this out." "Some things can't be worked out, honey," Lena said. "Your father and I have grown apart. We want different things." "What you want," I said, "is to have your cake and eat it too." "Well, congratulations. You've got Eddie. Now you can figure out how to pay for his fancy apartment and designer suits." That hit home. I could see it in her face. "We'll see about that," Lena said. "I'm calling my lawyer in the morning." "You do that. I'm calling mine too." After they left, I sat in my kitchen and made a list. 20 years of marriage teaches you things about a person, things they'd rather keep private. Like how Lena had been skimming from her office expense account to pay for her shopping habit. Nothing major, just a few hundred here and there for client dinners that were actually spa days. Like how she'd been lying to the IRS about her home office deductions, claiming our entire basement as business space when she used it maybe twice a year. Like how she'd been having long, flirty phone conversations with clients that went way beyond professional. And Eddie? Eddie had his own secrets, like the fact that his consulting business was actually a front for loan sharking. Like how he'd been using his downtown apartment for high-stakes poker games that definitely weren't legal. Like how he owed money to some very unfriendly people in Cleveland. I'd kept quiet about all of it because that's what friends do. That's what husbands do. But I wasn't feeling very friendly anymore. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Eddie's apartment building. Used his spare key to let myself in. The place reeked of Lena's perfume and something else I didn't want to think about. I wasn't there to trash the place. I'm not that kind of guy. I was there to retrieve something. 2 years ago, Eddie had asked me to help him move his safe. Heavy bastard. Took both of us and a dolly to get it up to his bedroom. He'd made a joke about keeping his insurance policies in there. Documents, photos, things that could be useful if the wrong people came asking questions. What he didn't know was that I'd watched him enter the combination. Old habit from the construction site, always pay attention to lock combinations and alarm codes. You never know when you'll need them. The safe opened on the first try. Inside, I found exactly what I'd expected. Photos of his poker games, records of his loans, and a thick folder labeled Business Associates that contained names, addresses, and amounts owed. I also found something I hadn't expected. A USB drive labeled LH Insurance. LH Lena Henderson, my wife's maiden name. I pocketed the drive and locked the safe. Whatever was on there, I'd look at it later. Right now, I had other business to attend to. My first stop was Lena's office. Henderson and Associates PR occupied the entire third floor of a downtown office building. Very sleek, very modern, very expensive. I'd always wondered how she afforded it. I didn't go up. Instead, I sat in my truck across the street and waited. At 12:15, Lena emerged with 2 other women I recognized from office parties. They were heading to lunch, probably to discuss how to handle the David situation. I followed them to their usual spot, an upscale bistro 3 blocks away. Found a parking spot with a clear view of their table by the window. Then I made some phone calls. The first was to Lena's biggest client, a local politician running for mayor. Very family values, very concerned about image. "Mr. Patterson, this is David Henderson, Lena's husband. I thought you should know that my wife has been having an affair with her business partner." I'm not sure if this affects your campaign, but I thought you deserved a heads up before it becomes public knowledge. The second call was to the wives of Lena's other major clients. Amazing how quickly word spreads in a small business community. The third call was to Eddie's landlord. Turns out running illegal gambling operations is a lease violation. Who knew? By the time Lena got back to her office, her phone was ringing off the hook. My phone rang at 3 o'clock. "What did you do?" Lena's voice was shaking with rage. "I told the truth. Isn't that what you wanted? No more pretending?" "You vindictive son of a witch. You're trying to destroy my business." "I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm just making sure people know what kind of person they're dealing with." "David, I swear to God, if you don't stop this right now, you'll what? Leave me? Sleep with my best friend?" "Too late, honey. You already played those cards." I hung up and poured myself a beer. It was only 3 in the afternoon, but I figured I'd earned it. The real fun started that evening. Eddie showed up at my house at 8 o'clock, pounding on the door like he was trying to break it down. I watched him through the peephole for a minute, enjoying the show. His face was red, his usually perfect hair was messed up, and his expensive suit was wrinkled. I opened the door but left the chain on. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't." "Dave, come on, man. This is getting out of hand." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it's just getting started." I closed the door and went back to my beer. The pounding continued for another 5 minutes, then stopped. Through the window, I watched Eddie get into his BMW and screech out of my driveway. My phone rang immediately. "David." Lena's voice was cold, controlled. She was using her business voice, the one she used with difficult clients. "We need to discuss this situation rationally." "What situation is that?" "You know exactly what situation. You cost me 3 clients today." "I didn't cost you anything. Your choices cost you those clients." "My personal life has nothing to do with my professional capabilities." "Tell that to Mayor Patterson. He seemed to think it had everything to do with his family values campaign." Silence on the other end. Then, "What do you want, David?" "I want my wife back. The one I married 20 years ago. The one who loved me instead of my bank account. But she's gone, isn't she? So I guess I want the next best thing. Which is justice." I hung up and plugged in the USB drive I'd taken from Eddie's safe. What I found there made my blood run cold. Photos. Dozens of them. Lena and Eddie, obviously taken without her knowledge. Lena changing clothes. Lena in the shower at what looked like a hotel room. Lena sleeping. And videos. Lena and Eddie together. Intimate moments that should have been private. All time-stamped, all carefully cataloged. Eddie hadn't just been sleeping with my wife. He'd been documenting it. Probably for blackmail, or maybe just for his own sick pleasure. I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. This changed everything. Lena might be a cheating wife, but she was also a victim. Eddie was worse than a homewrecker. He was a predator. But that didn't mean I was going to go easy on either of them. I copied everything to my own drive, then did something that felt both wrong and absolutely necessary. I uploaded the most damaging photos to a file-sharing site and emailed the link to Eddie with a simple message. "Stop calling me or these go public." Then I made another call. "Tony, it's Dave Henderson. Yeah, I know it's late. Listen, you still work for the building inspector's office? I've got a tip for you about some illegal modifications at 1247 Riverside Drive, apartment 12B. Eddie's apartment had been extensively remodeled to accommodate his poker games. Soundproofing, extra electrical work, modifications to the ventilation system, all done without permits, all violations of city code. By morning, Eddie would have bigger problems than his love life. But I wasn't done. The next day, I drove to Jessica's college, found her in the student center studying with a group of friends. She looked up when she saw me, and her face immediately went guarded. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk. Privately." She followed me outside, her arms crossed defensively. "If you're here to trash Mom some more, I'm here to tell you the truth. All of it." I showed her the photos, not the intimate ones. Just enough to prove that Eddie had been stalking her mother, that this wasn't some romantic affair, but something much darker. Jessica's face went white, then red, then white again. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mom doesn't know about these, does she?" "I don't think so, but she needs to." "Dad, this is sick. Eddie's been in our house. He's been to my birthday parties. He's like family." "Was like family. People change, Jess. Or maybe they just show you who they really were all along." She was crying now, quiet tears that broke my heart. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to protect our family, what's left of it." That afternoon, I called Lena. Meet me at Romano's. Same private room. 1 hour. David, I don't think... 1 hour, Lena. Trust me, you want to hear this. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the same chair she'd occupied 3 nights ago when she'd blown up our marriage. She looked tired, older somehow. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes. What's this about? She asked. I slid the USB drive across the table. Your boyfriend's insurance policy. She picked it up, frowning. What is this? Eddie's been filming you, photographing you, documenting your entire affair? The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? Hidden cameras in his apartment, photos taken through windows, videos of you sleeping. He's got everything, Lena. Everything. She stared at the drive like it was a snake. Why are you telling me this? Because whatever else has happened between us, you're still Jessica's mother, and you don't deserve what he was planning to do to you. What was he planning? Blackmail, probably. Maybe just sick entertainment. Does it matter? Lena was shaking now, her hands trembling as she set the drive down. How did you get this? I broke into his apartment, used the spare key he gave me last year. That's illegal. So is secretly filming someone without their consent. So is running illegal gambling operations. So is loan sharking. Your boyfriend's got a lot of secrets, Lena. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. Vulnerable, scared, human. What do you want me to do? She asked quietly. I want you to be smart. End it with Eddie, tonight. And then we're going to have a long conversation about what happens next. And if I don't, then you can figure out how to handle Eddie's blackmail on your own. Because I won't be around to help. She picked up the drive and put it in her purse. I need time to think. You've got until tomorrow night. After that, all bets are off. I left her sitting there, staring at the candle that was burning down to nothing. Lena called me the next morning at 6 a.m. It's done, she said. Her voice sounded hollow, exhausted. I ended it with Eddie. How'd he take it? About as well as you'd expect. He tried to deny the photos at first. Then he got angry. Started making threats. What kind of threats? He said he'd ruin me. Destroy my business. Make sure everyone in town knew what kind of woman I really was. I almost laughed. Little late for that, don't you think? Silence on the other end. Then, David, I think I'm in real trouble. Eddie's not just angry. He's unstable. He kept talking about how much money he'd invested in our relationship, how I owed him. Invested how? The apartment was for me. The trips, the dinners, the jewelry. He said I was his property now, that I couldn't just walk away. A chill ran down my spine. I'd known Eddie was a creep, but this sounded like something darker, something dangerous. Where are you now? At the office. I came in early to avoid him. David, I'm scared. 20 years of marriage. And I'd never heard Lena admit to being scared of anything. She was the toughest person I knew, the kind of woman who'd stare down a boardroom full of hostile executives without blinking. Come home, I said. We'll figure this out. I can't. You changed the locks, remember? I'll change them back. Another silence. Why would you do that? Because despite everything that's happened, I still love you. And because Jessica needs both her parents alive and functional. David, just come home, Lena. She showed up at noon, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I'd already changed the locks back and had coffee waiting. We sat at the kitchen table like we had thousands of times before, but everything felt different now. Tell me about Eddie's business, I said. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like she was trying to warm herself. I didn't know about the illegal stuff at first. I thought he was just successful. When did you figure it out? A few months ago. Men started showing up at the apartment. Scary men. Eddie would send me to the bedroom while they talked, but I could hear enough. Money, debts, collections. Did he ever ask you to help with anything? Launder money through your business, maybe? Her face went pale. How did you know? Because I know Eddie, and I know you. What did you do for him? Nothing major, just some fake invoices, some consulting fees that didn't exist. Maybe $20,000 over the past 6 months. $20,000. Enough to destroy her business and land her in federal prison if the wrong people found out. Lena, do you understand what you've done? That's wire fraud. Tax evasion. If Eddie decides to throw you under the bus, he won't. He can't afford to. It would implicate him too. Unless he's already planning to disappear. Unless he's been setting you up to take the fall all along. The look on her face told me she'd already considered that possibility. My phone rang. Unknown number. Dave, it's Eddie. We need to talk. No, we don't. Yeah, we do. Your wife owes me money, a lot of money. And if she thinks she can just walk away from her obligations, she's got another thing coming. What obligations? The apartment lease is in her name. The credit card she used for our trips, those are her responsibility. The business loan I co-signed for her, that's coming due next month. I looked at Lena, who had gone white as a sheet. How much? I asked. 60,000, give or take, plus interest. Go to heck, Eddie. Dave, you don't understand. This isn't just about money anymore. Your wife humiliated me. Made me look weak in front of some very important people. That's got to be addressed. Are you threatening her? I'm explaining reality. Lena borrowed money from people who don't accept I changed my mind as an excuse. They're going to want their investment back, one way or another. The line went dead. I looked at Lena, who was crying now. Is it true? About the lease and the credit cards? She nodded miserably. He said it was for tax purposes, that it would look better if everything was in my name. And the business loan? 50,000. I thought it was legitimate. I used it to expand the office, hire 2 new employees. When's it due? Next Friday. I did the math in my head. Even if we sold everything we owned, we couldn't come up with $60,000 in a week. And that was assuming Eddie's business associates were willing to wait for their money. Pack a bag, I said. What? Pack a bag. We're getting out of town for a while. David, we can't just run away. We're not running away. We're buying time to figure out our next move. That's when the first brick came through our living room window. I grabbed Lena and pulled her down as glass exploded across the floor. Through the broken window, I could see a black SUV parked across the street. Back door, I said. Now. We crawled through the house on our hands and knees. I grabbed my truck keys from the kitchen counter and my .38 from the bedroom safe. I'd bought the tool years ago for home protection, never thinking I'd actually need it. The back door opened onto our fenced yard. I could hear voices in the front, men talking in low, urgent tones. The truck's in the garage, I whispered to Lena. We're going to run for it. Stay low. We made it to the garage without being seen. I hit the remote for the garage door and started the truck simultaneously. As the door rolled up, I could see 2 men running around the side of the house. I floored it. The truck shot out of the garage and down the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw the men scramble for the black SUV. One of them was talking into a cell phone. Where are we going? Lena asked. Somewhere Eddie can't find us. I took a series of random turns, checking constantly for the SUV. After 20 minutes, I was satisfied we weren't being followed. David, this is insane. We should call the police. And tell them what? That your boyfriend's loan shark friends are after you? That you've been laundering money through your business? She didn't have an answer for that. I pulled into a motel parking lot on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions about identification. Wait here, I told Lena. Keep your head down. I paid cash for a room and parked the truck behind the building where it couldn't be seen from the street. The room was exactly what you'd expect. 2 beds, a broken air conditioner, and carpet that had seen better decades. Lena sat on one of the beds and put her head in her hands. How did my life become this? You made choices, I said. We both did. Now we have to live with the consequences. So what's the plan? Hide in this dump until Eddie's friends get bored and go away? The plan is to survive long enough to figure out how to fight back. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. We know where you are. This ends badly for everyone if you don't cooperate. I showed the message to Lena. She read it and started crying again. They're going to end us, aren't they? Not if I can help it. I was already forming a plan. It was dangerous, probably illegal, and almost certainly stupid. But it was the only chance we had. The plan came to me at 3 a.m, lying on a bed that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Lena was finally asleep, curled up on the other bed with her clothes still on. She looked younger somehow, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in years. I'd been thinking about Eddie's weaknesses, his ego, his need to be seen as successful and powerful, his terror of the people he owed money to. What if I could turn those weaknesses against him? I slipped out of the motel room and drove to an all-night diner across town, used their payphone to make a call I probably should have made days ago. Cleveland Police, Detective Morrison. Detective, this is an anonymous tip. I have information about illegal gambling operations in Buffalo. specifically involving a man named Eduardo Martinez. I gave them Eddie's address, described his operation, and mentioned the names I'd found in his safe. Then I hung up and drove back to the motel. Lena was awake when I got back, sitting by the window with the curtain cracked, watching the parking lot. "Where did you go?" "To make a phone call. How are you feeling?" "Like my life is over." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "David, I'm so sorry for all of it. The affair, the money, dragging you into this mess. We'll figure it out. Will we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like we're both going to end up dead or in prison." I sat down next to her on the bed. "Do you remember our first apartment? That studio above the pizza place?" She almost smiled. "It was horrible. The heat didn't work, and it smelled like pepperoni. But we were happy there. We didn't have anything, but we had each other. That was a long time ago, David. We're different people now. Are we? Or did we just forget who we used to be?" Before she could answer, my phone rang. "Jessica." "Dad, where are you? I went by the house and there's glass everywhere. The neighbors said they heard shouting." "We're safe, honey. But we had to leave for a while." "Leave? Dad? What's going on?" I looked at Lena, who nodded. Jessica deserved to know the truth. "Your mother got involved with some dangerous people through Eddie. We're laying low until we can figure out how to handle it." "Dangerous people? Dad, this sounds like something out of a movie." "I wish it was. Listen, I need you to do something for me. Go to your dorm and stay there. Don't go anywhere alone, and if anyone asks about your mother or me, you don't know anything. Can you do that?" "You're scaring me." "Good. Scared keeps you alive. We'll call you when it's safe." I hung up and immediately turned off the phone. If Eddie's friends were smart enough to track cell phones, we'd just given away our location. "We need to move," I told Lena. "Where?" "I know a place." The place was a hunting cabin owned by my buddy Mike, about an hour north of the city. Mike had given me the key years ago, told me to use it whenever I wanted to get away from civilization. It was perfect, isolated, off the grid, and completely unknown to Eddie or anyone else from our old life. We drove through the pre-dawn darkness in silence. Lena dozed fitfully in the passenger seat, while I kept checking the rearview mirror for headlights that never appeared. The cabin was exactly as I remembered it, small, rustic, and completely private. No cell phone coverage, no internet, no connection to the outside world. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. "How long do we stay here?" Lena asked as we settled in. "As long as it takes." "For what?" "For Eddie to make a mistake." I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I drove to a gas station with cell coverage and turned on my phone. 7 missed calls from Jessica, 12 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 1 voicemail from Eddie. "Dave, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Lena owes money to people who don't like waiting. Every day you hide makes it worse for everyone. Call me back and let's work something out." I deleted the message and called Jessica. "Dad, thank God I've been trying to reach you all night." "What's wrong?" "Eddie's been arrested. It's all over the news. They raided his apartment and found pills, money, illegal gambling equipment. The FBI is involved." I smiled grimly. The anonymous tip had worked better than I'd hoped. "There's more," Jessica continued. "They're looking for Mom. They think she was involved in money laundering." My smile disappeared. "How do you know this?" "It's on the news, Dad. Mom's picture is on TV. They're calling her a person of interest in a federal investigation." I hung up and drove back to the cabin as fast as I could. Lena was sitting on the porch, enjoying the morning sun. She looked more relaxed than she had in days. "We have a problem," I said. Her face fell as I explained about Eddie's arrest and the federal investigation. By the time I finished, she was pale and shaking. "They're going to arrest me. Not if we're smart about it." "David, this is federal. They don't make deals with small-time money launderers." "They do if the small-time money launderer can give them something bigger." I'd been thinking about this during the drive back. Eddie's operation was small potatoes compared to his connections in Cleveland. The FBI would be very interested in those names I'd found in his safe. "You're going to turn yourself in," I said. "But first, we're going to make sure you have something to trade." It took 2 days to put together a complete picture of Eddie's operation. I drove to various locations with cell coverage, made careful inquiries, and slowly built a file that would be worth something to federal prosecutors. Eddie hadn't just been running illegal gambling and loan sharking. He'd been laundering money for a major Cleveland crime family, using his legitimate consulting business as a front. The amounts were significant, over $2 million in the past year alone. Lena had been a small part of a much larger operation. On Thursday morning, I drove her to the FBI field office in Buffalo. We'd rehearsed her story a dozen times. She would cooperate fully, provide all the information she had, and hope that her cooperation would be worth more than her prosecution. "What about us?" she asked as we sat in the parking lot outside the federal building. "What about us? Do we have a future together after all this?" I thought about it for a long moment. I don't know. We've both done things, said things. Maybe we can find our way back to each other. Maybe we can't. But we're going to survive this, and that's what matters right now. She leaned over and kissed me, softly, like she had when we were young and poor and happy in that studio apartment that smelled like pepperoni. "I love you, David. I never stopped loving you, even when I was being an idiot. I love you too." She got out of the truck and walked into the building. I watched until she disappeared through the glass doors, then drove home to wait. The waiting lasted 6 hours. When Lena finally called, she sounded exhausted but relieved. "And they're not arresting me. Not today, anyway. I gave them everything I had on Eddie and his Cleveland connections. They said if the information checks out, they'll recommend minimal charges." "What does that mean?" "Probation, maybe. Community service. A chance to rebuild my life." "Our lives," I corrected. "Our lives," she agreed. Eddie pled guilty to federal racketeering charges 6 months later. He got 15 years in federal prison. The Cleveland crime family was dismantled, their money laundering operation shut down, their leadership facing decades in prison. Lena received 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service. Her business was destroyed, her reputation in ruins, but she was alive and free. We sold the house and moved to a smaller place across town. Started over with nothing but each other, just like we had 23 years ago. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But we worked at it day by day, conversation by conversation. Jessica graduated from college and got a job in another state. She visits on holidays and calls every Sunday. She's forgiven us both, mostly, but she's also learned not to trust blindly. Maybe that's a good thing. As for me, I learned that revenge is a dish best served with patience and careful planning. Eddie thought he could destroy my marriage and steal my wife. Instead, he destroyed himself and gave me a chance to rebuild something stronger than what I'd lost. Sometimes late at night, I think about that dinner at Romano's. The moment when everything changed. The moment when my life fell apart and started coming back together in a completely different configuration. I wouldn't recommend the experience to anyone, but I can't say I regret how it turned out. Lena and I are different people now, scarred, wiser, more careful with each other's hearts. We've learned that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day, a commitment to work through the hard times instead of running away from them. We're not the same couple who sat in that restaurant 20 years ago, young and naive and certain that love would conquer everything. We're better than that. We're survivors. And Eddie Martinez? He's learning that federal prison is a lot less comfortable than his luxury apartment. I hear he's not adjusting well to the accommodations. Sometimes justice comes from the courts. Sometimes it comes from the choices people make. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very patient, it comes from both.